years ago. I used to visit her at the Middle Mall. And every time she called me, she said, she loves it. Why am I alive? When am I going to die? You don't ask me that. I don't think you'll always finish on the planet. So you've got things left to do. So you will go when it's your turn. So now, when it's only 2 weeks before, you would stand and lie in line to when I said the whole time she put her lunch on bags, in the morning, not talking, I see probably because then she would have you coming and she's all across the birds and she's up to the guy and she's expecting she's so lovely and so chirpy, such a day going told and everything like that. She's a totally different person so that you hear. And I'm so glad you're back here and that together. And then I was also she wanted to spend Tuesday, Thursdays with Stephanie. She said she'd give me a fortnight and they keep Thursdays free so that I come and spend Thursday with her. And that was the plan, and then she decided to leave us on that Thursday. Whatever, she's so cute, you know, she's got this soft heart and an eye, something she's super active. And so she doing that little thing on that eye, so tender and soft, where she tells me why that was very special.
Well, here's one of them kids. They won't go low.
give her a body wash, give her another conditioner, and then she must go through. And I was flying to Madagascar every morning, and I had this vision of, and I was telling the guy sitting next to me, I said, and he I was telling him why I was saying so that's why. And then I said, you know what, I must tell you, like, where do you mean? I said, hey, he's leaving, he was just out of here. And well, I was like 6 hours out of South Africa. And he just looked at me and I said, no, she's come out as a man. And I went to South Africa, my sisters were, I've got 4 young sisters. They were all at the end and I could see that they'd been crying and they looked at me and the guy was still walking with me out of the, the terminal. I said, you see, my sisters are here, and he waited, because he saw I was a bit, like, anxious. And my sisters are here, she died at 2 this morning. And he just looked at me, I said, I told you, I knew she was leaving. So I just dressed her and put her in a coffin. I told her the next day we were going to die in her hotel.
Oh, well, I think I'll be good. Thank you.
What I'm about to say to you will come as a surprise. If, therefore, you have medication for your heart, please keep it close by. In fact, before I say it, could I ask, are there anyone present this morning with a medical background? Here goes. Glenda arranged her own funeral. Is everybody okay? She decided what she was going to wear today. She decided that it was imperative that she had her faithful watch on. She decided that should be lots of flowers. Well, we've not listened to that so much today, Glenda, and I'll tell you why soon. She decided where this service was going to take place. The interesting point about that is this is not even her church. Even more so, this is not even my church. Glenda, and again I remind you to hold that medication close, has managed to get an Anglican minister to take a church in a service in a Presbyterian church. Even the church bowed down today.
That's Glenda.
She knew what was to happen after her cremation. She knew what was going to happen for her after she had passed. She knew what hymns were going to be sung today. She knew who she wanted to speak today. She planned everything. Today, together, we're going to buck that system. We're going to decide who is going to speak Glenda. There will be a chance for you in this service to come and share. On behalf of Glenda, I too have a watch, and we will manage that, just like she managed us. Glenda has been described as many things. Organised, loving of family, bossy, you see, but the reason you are here this morning is because you saw below the surface. You knew that you were loved by her. You knew that you were safe in her care, regardless of what it looked like on top. I want to acknowledge those who are watching via live stream who can't be here. We acknowledge you this morning. On behalf of Alison and the family, we give thanks to you for travelling. Many of you have travelled long distances because it was important. On behalf of the family also, thank you for the many emails that you have sent. Glenda said this, that there is time for everything if you make time. Today's that exception. If we could, we would gladly love to have been able to read every single one of them out today. We acknowledge you for your thoughtfulness and gift today. Shortly, we're going to hear from 3 people who will represent part of Glenda's life. Then there is going to be a chance for you to come. For now, we're going to pray, and I'm going to invite Robin, chaplain to the hospitals, to come and lead us.
Retired. If I was at National Women's and we were going to pray, you think about the setting. But I would say something like, we're going to pray. And if that's not your native air or something you're used to, then listen. And if it makes sense to you, it's praying. It's not much more complicated than that. And if it's not something you really don't want to be part of, just use the time to reflect. There are 2 prayers. We pray. God, our comforter, you are a refuge and a strength for us, a helper close at hand in times of distress. Help us so to hear the words of our faith, that our fear is dispelled, our loneliness eased, and our hope reawakened. May your Holy Spirit lift us above our natural sorrow to the peace and light of your constant love. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. God our Father, we thank you that you have made each of us in your own image and given us gifts and talents with which to serve you. We thank you for Glenda, the years we shared with her, the good we saw in her, the love we received from her. Now, give us strength and courage to leave her in your care, confident in your promise of eternal life, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Amen.
Thank you. If you are able, I invite you to stand as we sing the first of the hymns that Glenda has chosen, Great is Thy Faith. we're going to hear from Mervyn, I want to acknowledge you, Alison. There is no greater example of care, love, patience. God's blessing be upon you this Mervyn.
Every person's life on earth ends the same way. It's only the details of how each person lived that distinguishes that person from another. A quote by Ernest Hemingway, abridged. Good afternoon all, to those gathered here, to those who are watching live stream, and to those who may view this occasion later through the wonder of technology. My name is Mervyn, and I'm the eldest of 4 boys that Glenda and brother Bill got as extra siblings when their father, Harry Benjamin Stimpson, was tragically lost in World War II, and their mother, Florrie, remarried our dad, Trevor Jones. I trust you will bear with me as I cover core aspects of Glenda's life as a eulogy to her. I will be relaying sectors of her life in blocks, her family and life timeline, her career path, and her many qualities that others have appreciated and thanked her for, but by no means will I cover the full gamut of Glenda's life. Her family and life timeline. Ooh, I should have turned that off, shouldn't I?
Glenda.
Yeah, that's
Sorry.
Hard times, war, rationing, forging a life from the land. Farming was the majority occupation of the rural communities that Glenda grew up in. They were hard times, often living from hand to mouth with not much left over. Luxuries were very rare. Simple things like travelling miles into town once a year to the A&P show with 2 shillings in your pocket, so 20 cents today, spending money. They grew most of their own vegetables, and the farm provided meat, milk and butter. Communities at that time placed strong emphasis on family and community. Everybody pitched in with haymaking and whatever support that was needed to help each other. A foundation stone that I believe significantly influenced the way that Glenda lived out her life. Glenda was born at Stratford in Taranaki on the 12th of July 1939, 16 months after her brother Bill, but only 7 weeks before World War II was declared. Her dad, Ben Stimpson, joined up for military service and served with New Zealand forces overseas. He was wounded and unfortunately was lost to the family when the hospital ship he was being evacuated on was sunk by enemy fire. Her mum and ours, Florrie, then lived with her parents in the town of Englewood until she was 7. So Glenda, like many of her era, only had Granddad as a father figure in her life until 1946. Florrie married Trevor, who lived on a farm at Mahoe on the southeast fertile foothills of Mount Taranaki. They then moved all the way to the Bay of Plenty, to just south of Waihi, to a little township, it wasn't much of a township, I'm sure, called Waimata. Soon after, Florrie delivered 2 premature twins, myself and Sister Maureen, each only just over 3 pounds in weight. We were transferred to Karatani Neonatal Specialist Care up in Auckland. This is 1948. The car Dad had to transport us was a small Austin A40. Mum travelled up, but in those days there were not rooms for mothers, so she had to return to Waimata and send her milk supply up daily to Auckland by bus. Glenda told me several times that one day the bus driver, it was Glenda's role to wait for the bus and hand over the milk to the driver. She told me several times that one day the bus driver drove straight past her, and she was mortified to feel terribly responsible that Mervyn and Maureen weren't going to get their milk that day. Maureen died of pneumonia 3 weeks later and is buried at Waihi with the grandparents. All of this happened in 1947, late 47, early 48, when there was a nationwide polio epidemic. Glenda and Bill had to do their schooling by home correspondence, not unlike what our grandchildren have experienced recently with COVID-19. Pop Jones, my grandfather, bought a 90% bush-covered 363 acres of hill country in the Wop Wops called Aharoa. Today, it's 15 minutes drive west inland from Puhoi, north of Waiwera. That block was certainly not farming country. It had lots of feral goats, possums, gorse, tea tree, kanuka, and bush cover, but the attraction had been the native timber on the site. However, a lot had already been stripped out, including huge kauri, so the select timber soon ran out, and the family was left to eke out a living, milking only 8 or 10 cows on the limited grass paddocks, not a real income stream. Other relatives joined them at different times, living in the one-bedroom warri, clad in corrugated iron, and a small 2-bedroom house that they all helped build. Trevor got work as a labourer for the local county council, driving into Warkworth at times. Glenda attended the local primary school until the end of 1952, when she reached high school age. But there was no high school near Aharoa, so she moved in with my dad's sister, Auntie Dillis and Uncle Ken first, and then Auntie Hilda, Valerie and Graham and Bev in Henderson, where she boarded through her high school years. She was a founding student at Henderson High School. It was here in Henderson that she met with and made lifelong friend Nairi. And they attended the local Baptist church and went to the youth group, organised camps together. She was water baptised in May 1956, that is by full immersion, not sprinkling. And meanwhile, Trevor and Forrie had twins, Calvin and Neville, and 2 years later, Robin. Glenda played a huge part in supporting us 4 boys throughout our school years, growing up and continuing right through our lives. Her support was caring, including life milestones like birthdays, driving lessons when only she had a car. There were times when my dad did not have a car due to health problems that he had, clothes for birthday and Christmas, paying for trips to our beloved relatives in Taranaki for the summer school holidays, and more. Her career path. Glenda got her first job with a local firm in Henderson, Hetson's Timber, but she soon changed and in 1957 went to work in the Inland Revenue Department. She was seconded to Wellington for 6 months, travelling, of course, on her scooter of the time, fitted with luggage racks front and back. She boarded with Nairi's mum, affectionately known as Mum Hago. At the IRD, she learned the ways you could get tax exemptions and credits to lessen the tax bill, which she deployed with persistence. And she did tax returns for many right up until recent years, and some of you have probably been recipients of her generosity in producing tax returns. In 1960, she decided to give nursing a go. She trained at Green Lane. This was before National Women's was instituted in 1964. In 1961, she passed her first nursing exam, Theory and Practice of Nursing. 2 years later, she passed her state finals. Obstetric nursing, medicinal nursing, surgical nursing, practical obstetrics, and practical general nursing. In 1964, she thought she might go to Bible college where Norrie and Owen were, but she wanted to travel the South Island first. So she picked up a job and she travelled on her trusty new 150cc poop scooter down to Balclutha, which is south of Dunedin, to serve 6 months in the local maternity unit. In an article in Midwifery News, by her own admission, this one-person maternity unit is where she revelled in the night duty shift on her own. It was here she decided once and for all to commit to nursing, specifically midwifery. She took her time to travel around the South Island and tramped the Milford Track before continuing midwifery training in 1965 back in Auckland, starting with 6 months at St Helens in Mount Albert. She started at National Women's Hospital on the 21st of March 1966. She was there in one role or another until the end of her nursing career some 45 plus years later. In those early days, she was distressed to see the level of inexperience of the midwives that were training her. So she mastered some procedures that improved methods on her own and was determined to teach these to others so that they could master the delivery process and achieve better results for mother and baby. Her life continued to be one of instructor, teacher, and many trainee nurse was scared of her, even terrified, as her manner was said to be abrupt. Her bark was worse than her bite, and I'm quoting real letters from her scrapbooks here. She was known throughout the hospital as Sarge. That's not directly to her, of course, that's amongst the nurses. And here is a memory from just such a nurse, Carol Cooper McCord. Glenda was an amazing teacher, and she cottoned on early that maternity was my passion also, and fed it with lots of hands-on experience. One episode remained clearly in both our minds, and we talked of it 20 years later at a midwifery conference. In my first week on my second placement, at the age of 17, Glenda had assigned me to a lovely lady in labour. I rang the call bell and said, "She smells like and sounds like she's ready to push." Glenda told me, "You don't know enough to decide that," and out she went. About 5 minutes later, I called again, and she came in high dudgeon stating, "I told you she wasn't ready to push." I replied, "She didn't, she just sneezed." And I showed her between the lady's legs there lay a 12-pound, 10-ounce boy. This was her 11th child. Later, Glenda asked, "How do you know all this stuff?" I said, "I didn't know." This kind of knowledge continued to come to me, and years later I found out that my great-grandmother had been a midwife in London, and I made the assumption she was there as my guide throughout my career. But it is the knowledge and confidence Glenda instilled in me that made my journey easier. So she rose to sister status in 1967 and did a postgraduate year in Wellington in 1968. She rose through the ranks of ward sister, clinical charge midwife, until she took over as supervisor of delivery suite in 1976. Glenda was not afraid to challenge the die-hard hierarchical thinking that formed the standard practice of doctors, predominantly male, making decisions for maternity, birthing and postnatal care. She was the first secretary of a new branch for midwives within the New Zealand Nursing Association in 1971, and in 1973 was its national chairperson. This led to an invitation to the International Confederation of Midwives Congress in Lausanne, Switzerland in 1975. She spoke on New Zealand's postgraduate midwifery education. A very difficult task, she said, because so little was actually established at that time. However, Glenda grasped the opportunity, applied for and got funding to take a 6-month sabbatical to look at midwifery around the world. This trip was a bridge to later bringing some of that midwifery offshore expertise to New Zealand for advancing the battle against prejudice and midwifery practice. She had a great time and delight in visiting hospitals in New York, Sweden, Switzerland, Holland, London, Oxford, Cardiff, Edinburgh and Dublin. Glenda chose to step aside from her delivery suite leadership role in 1979 as she was frustrated at the hospital's ignorance to request for increase in midwives and resources, and saw herself as a possible block because of clashes with management. The then matron was overruled in decision-making by a committee of obstetricians, paediatricians and anaesthetists with little specialist midwifery input. 1979 is also the time that she went on a trip to America to attend Calvin's wedding. She said that was a life-changing trip. Others will tell tales of that experience. And she returned to delivery suite as a charge midwife on night shift. Glenda was part of a group instrumental in establishing the New Zealand College of Midwives, of which she was made a life member in 1990. She was a core member of a group that organised a conference labelled Birth in the 21st Century, advocating for the breaking of traditions such as not allowing dads at the birth. In July 2004, the majority of the facilities in National Women's at Green Lane were moved to the new Central Auckland Hospital with the closure of the Childbirth Education Unit, which Glenda had been instrumental in setting up. The National Women's leader at the time said this in an email to Glenda: "I want to acknowledge your excellent leadership and the stylish way you go into bat for the things you believe." For many years, she administered bookings, accounts, maintenance management, and more of 2 properties that the Nurses Rest and Recreation Society held as places available for R&R. She made those available to us as her family, and we had several stays at Manly and Buckling's Beach on her credits. I have covered only a thumbnail of her nursing career, but I trust that gives you a picture of her dedication to nursing and midwifery, her hobbies and other life activities. Glenda always had an interest in photography. It wasn't so much a hobby as a passion. Behind the in-your-face camera and all was a deep desire to make sure all manner of life's milestones were recorded for memories, no matter what the occasion. Back in the day, roll film and slides were the vehicle for photos, and many times she would take several rolls of film to the chemist or Noel Leeming to process them, and then take a selection back to reprint so she could pass them on. I'm sure all present and others who will view this service today will have been subject matter for her lenses somewhere in the past. She accumulated a great number of her own photo albums and continually put together many albums for others after milestone birthdays, weddings, conferences and more. She also loved good scenery, and our beautiful country gave her many opportunities to click away. One of her great loves was playing cards. She revelled in a good game of 500 and also cribbage. This came from the earlier times when families had no TV and evenings were keeping warm by the wood burner stove and getting light from the kerosene lantern. She bought her first house in Nolan Road, Green Lane, and took in lodgers to help pay the mortgage. That house was a mecca for hospitality, being used for midweek church gatherings, still remembered by our friends Dan and Pam, and many were welcomed across the threshold. Over 10 years in that house, there were family members, relatives, friends, and referrals from questionable backgrounds. All in all, 36 individuals or couples and 2 complete families of 5 and 6 went through that house. She moved down the road to Ellerslie, gradually building equity. She has moved on to several properties since, joining with her midwifery friends at the time, first Betty and then Alison. People were always made welcome in their homes. One of my first memories of her is walking through the dew-laden paddocks early in the morning to gather field mushrooms and take them back for a cook-up and a milk gravy heaped on toast for breakfast. She absolutely loved mushrooms. Glenda had her own health issues and she was hospitalised a number of times. And I won't go into all of that, but things like gastroenteritis, shingles, diabetes, heart and kidney stones were all things that she endured in her lifetime. She always had an eye for detail and was like a dog with a bone, questioning for detail, asking very direct questions, until she was satisfied with the answer. Glenda's strong beliefs, many would even say to the point of stubbornness, and a sense of justice. She would call a spade and let you know where she felt any discussion point should settle. She was one of the first to use the office of the Ombudsman to investigate bureaucratic secrecy behind some dealings going into bat on behalf of our brother Kelvin at the time. Today we have the Official Information Act, but back in the 70s it was much different. I wondered how best to bring this celebration of Glenda's life reflections on her anchored belief in Christianity. She was an avid attendee at the weekly Nurses Christian Fellowship at National Women's, finding much support from her fellow nurses. She didn't attend church in recent years, but would have her radio on Rema, avidly listening to music and some of the programs of encouragement. The following Bible scriptures she quoted in a letter to my son Bryce for his 21st birthday. I repeat them here as a summary of how Glenda used these verses as signposts for her life, not to preach or be in any way superior, but to understand Glenda was resolved that without guidelines we don't have a moral compass. When we fail or fall, we have God's grace available through Christ to come to him in humility so we can confidently get up and go on with life again. In all your ways acknowledge him and he will direct your path. Do nothing to cause your weaker brother to stumble. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. In everything, do it as unto the Lord. Let all things be done indecently and in order. A labourer is worthy of their hire. Are the statements when life throws us curved balls out of left field? Remember, it's not what happens to us, it's how we respond. Lastly, I leave you with a piece like so many she had saved in the many scrapbooks she kept of her life, called The Joys of Being 80. And just as an aside, I've spoken with several this morning that said how just over 18 months ago, about 20 months ago probably now, we celebrated with Glenda her 80th birthday down at Ngatia, and it was an occasion where many people gave her accolades of and memories of her life. But this is an abridged version of this little ditty. At 80, you can relax with no misgivings. Life begins at 80. Remember, old folk are worth a fortune, with silver in their hair, gold in their teeth, stones in their kidneys, lead in their feet, and gas in their stomachs. The preacher came the other day and said I should be thinking of the hereafter. I told him, I do, all the time, no matter where I am, in the kitchen, in the bedroom, or out in the garage. I ask myself now, just what am I hereafter? Thank you.
Glenda was known to speak at many funerals. If she were here, she would say to you, well done, brother. Thank you for honouring me. Thank you for speaking well of me. And then she would say to you, you left your phone on, no refreshments for you.
Unfortunately, I can't even find my phone to turn it off. I knew of Glenda long before she came into my life and became a special friend. Indeed, when we first bought a house together, she pointed out that she had given me a breadboard decorated with poker work some 20 years earlier as an engagement present. I still had it, but did not remember she had given it to me. Whether at National Women's or as a senior member of the midwifery community in New Zealand, she was well known at conferences and meetings and instrumental in the processes of midwives becoming independent practitioners. She was an amazing person and very kind to the many people who came to her for help. Glenda stood up for the underdog, but she was also a realist and didn't stand for any nonsense. She was the ideal teacher. She could have a class in fits of laughter, and people were entertained as they learned. She also had great practical skills and could show and tell people above her rank what to do without the patient necessarily knowing that she, Glenda, was directing operations. A great organiser, meetings, events, good causes, always making it happen. She was not easy to live with and expected to be in charge. At times, I felt like a project that was being worked on. She was always right and well practised in the art of having the last word. If she couldn't win, she would say, well, I'm not out to compete. We had a lot of fun together. She was well travelled, and together we saw most of New Zealand. Cape Reinga to Bluff, East Cape, and to her beloved Taranaki, and most places in between. Early on, I took over the driving in an act of self-preservation. Her car was covered with scrapes and bumps, and even her mobility scooter is very damaged. We sang in the car. She had a Sankey Singer's songbook in the glove box, so there was a great variety, and she knew most of the words, if not the tune. Everything had to be photographed. I was expected to stop at a moment's notice. Back, turn around, whatever, just for a photo. As time went on, I learned to look for the photos myself and stop in advance. And she began to introduce me as a friend of a famous New Zealand photographer. I persuaded her to look at real estate as a way of making an investment. We bought older places that needed doing up and then rented them. She was in her element. She'd worked in the tax department. She knew all about money and kept long and complicated accounts of every penny spent. That was how we were able to buy the farm. I loved the farm for the animals, but she loved it for the lifestyle and proudly proclaimed that she had come back to her farming roots. In the early days, she was involved with haymaking and feeding out, but she never walked far, and the ride-on lawnmower became her main means of transport. But it was also my farm transport. We stocked the farm bit by bit with Highland cattle and became breeders and showed at A&P shows. I loved it, and she was very proud. In retrospect, perhaps keeping the books was harder than I realised, as once we left the farm, she never wanted me to have cattle again. And so to retirement in Whitianga. She had been very unwell at the end of our time on the farm and was in ICU in Middlemore for 11 days with pneumonia. In fact, she was expected to die. But I told the doctors that they couldn't let her die, as there would be no one to teach the doctors how to do a vaginal breech delivery. Her ill health continued. She never looked after herself. One of her favourite sayings was, "You can't kill weeds." When the ambulance driver came to take her to hospital on the last night and asked to take her blood pressure, she said, "There'll be no charge for that." She was Glenda to the end, and I will miss her terribly. Thank you to everybody for your support, for coming, for the messages that have been sent, and I'm very much aware of your love and caring to me. Thank you.
Hi everyone. Thank you for your attendance today to help us celebrate her full and active life. My name is Robin, and I'm one of the 4 brothers, I'm actually the youngest, that Glenda loved and did so much for us during our lifetime. One of the first memories I have of Glenda is arriving home for a break from her nursing job on her poop scooter, one of many she owned. She would buy us new clothes, puzzles and colouring books. After our mum had had her first stroke, she arranged for mum and us 4 boys to travel to Stratford by train to stay with Auntie Gladys and the cousins. She paid for the train tickets, and we each had to make a list of all the clothes we packed and stick it to the suitcase lid to make sure on the return trip we didn't leave anything behind. She used to take us on some of her travels around the country, and somehow, some way, she always had a relative or friend to stay the night with. She took Neville on a South Island trip when he was 13 and recovering from an illness. And Neville remembers staying with nursing friends in Balclutha, where she did her postgraduate training. Glenda could always arrange a bed somewhere. Glenda was there to help us out. After Mum had had stroke number 2 and was bedridden, she organised us boys to do the house cleaning, make our beds every day, get our own breakfast as Dad had already gone to work, prepare the veggies for dinner, and along with Dad's help. When Glenda moved from driving scooters to cars, we were near the age where we could get our car licence. But the rule was that we wanted to have a driving lesson, we had to wash and sometimes polish her car. That was the rule. No washing the car, no lesson. My argument was that I could drive tractors and bikes on the farm and didn't have to wash them. Just saying. But it fell on deaf ears. One of the cars she owned was a Victor 101, which had a column change 3-speed gearbox. Now, a lot of the young people don't know what a column change is. And when she departed our home, it took a long time for her to get enough speed up for her to change into second gear. Thus, the engine was screaming up the hill, with most of us blocking our ears. Glenda helped us boys all through our lives, advising us on the possible career choices we could make, how to manage money, and plan for the future. She would always boast to others how her brothers were the best. And that was tested when we all got married. The old cliche that no one is good enough for us. It caused many a heated discussion. And much time was spent by the husbands to calm down the situation. One phrase that should not or never be mentioned by the boys was, Glenda always calls a spade a spade. You know what I mean? A lot of you here will have many different working experiences with Glenda. I found this out from a student nurse I knew years ago. And when I told her Glenda Stimpson was my sister, her first words were, "Oh my God." Oh my God. But she told me that Glenda was tough, loud, and demanding on the nurses. But she said that Glenda was firm but fair. And she learned a heck of a lot about nursing from her. As Merlin said, her nickname amongst the students was Sergeant Stimpson. So when she asked me about 18 months ago for my help, I didn't hesitate. She was slowly losing her sight, so needed my help with her computer, reading out her emails and helping her and Alison with paying the bills, as Glenda always handled the finances. During the COVID level 4 lockdown, she rang and asked me to take her to Waikato Hospital for an eye appointment, as Neville and Alison were unable to take her. I said yes straight away. I didn't know anything about the rules of the COVID lockdown 4, but amazingly the roads were very quiet. Nobody on the roads. I only saw one cop and he didn't stop me. We will miss her speeches at the family reunions and parties, miss her loyalty, love, laughter and helpfulness to us all. Rest in peace, dear Sister Glenda. Now I have a letter from Kelvin to read out from Chicago. Remembering our Sister Glenda comes with recognising how she would like us to consider her. She would say, "I was your second mother," and backs up to Mum and Dad. And a really good nurse. I therefore think that it's rather touching that she died just shy of Mother's Day and directly on National Nurses Day in the USA. How could I ever forget that? 44 years of living away from home and family gave me a different viewpoint on some of how the family history played out. confronting an 18-year-old young woman with the news that her stepfather had suffered a major heart attack and put his family in grave danger. The news might have tempted others to flee. Our Glenda, instead of thinking of herself first, she did the opposite and put herself last. 3 years later, this became even more crucial after Mum Jones had her first stroke, just past Glenda's 21st birthday. Her intended profession, nursing, she temporarily deferred that in order to be on permanent standby and the switch to the IRD. She never told me this, never complained of this, and or ever said that you owe me for this. She had a big compassionate heart and keen loyalty to her family. At the first sign of trouble, a call would go up, we need to call Glenda. She would leave no stone unturned to get us the help we needed. In later years, she would enjoy contacting family and friends with medical specialists when they needed that sort of help. She arranged for the twins, Neville and Calvin, to get speech therapy because they needed it. One day after class, she came to collect us and take us home. At the time, she was driving around town on a scooter. I said, "You can't get 3 people on a scooter." And she said, "Oh yes I can, watch me." She then told me to get on the back of her and for Neville to sit in the leg well out of sight. And off we went home. Not exactly street legal, but doable and practical in Glenda's estimate. We travelled approximately 10 kilometres that way. We felt in awe of her daredevil capacity and thought it was quite fun, especially after she got her first car and developed a good lead foot. Our job was to keep a lookout for the radar. My other favourite memory of taking was her taking all us 4 brothers to a hotel in Auckland for a meal to demonstrate the proper table etiquette. She had to organise proper clothing for this big event. Merv was about 15, Calvin and Neville about 11, and Robin was about 9. She ended up showing us what stemware to use and the purpose of forks and spoons and when to use them. Also gave us a good long discussion on table manners, and we patiently sat through, for the payoff, the food, which was good. May you have a short trip to heaven with a good guide. May you enjoy a beautiful reunion with all those whom you love in this earthly life. And may you come to know and radiate love, light and grace of our Father in heaven. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Neville, one of the twins. Linda said I must speak at her funeral. And I said, no, I just think my other brothers. She said, no way, you've got to get up and have a word about me. Well, I started, and there are thousands of memories I could have and speak about. But here are a few, and my memory is, when I was about 11, 12, Linda had come home from Green Lane Hospital, doing her nursing training, and looked at me and said, Neville, you're not well. So, bundled me on the back of the scooter, off to North Shore Hospital, which was the old North Shore Hospital, test amongst tests, and they discovered I had a system of heart problems. Glenda told the doctor he did not need to stay in hospital. He would go home and they can come round and do blood tests. So 7 weeks in bed, and poor Robin and Calvin had to do my chores. It was a long process. I got married to Rhonda, and later on we announced we was having our first child. Well, Glenda came round and gave me such a hug, it just about broke my back. She was going to have a nephew, and that meant so much to her. And she said, I will be there for the birth. And I said, I don't know about that. So she went on holiday, and she said, I will be back. But Matthew came early. And it was all babies. You can't tell them when they're going to come. So she was so excited that Mum and Dad had a grandson. And she was so proud of Matthew. He's here today beside me. She said to me, what are we going to call him? And we said, Matthew Thomas. After that, later on in 2000, Matthew decided that he was going to get married in Rarotonga. And we told Glenda, and Glenda said, I will be there. And she was there with her camera. Other things we did was trips to the United States to see Calvin's wedding. Well, I was the only man amongst 5 women, and it was very hard. She said to me, get my international driver's license. I said, what for? You are driving. So we got a V8 Dodge camper van, 30-foot camper van, and we drove 10,000 miles around the States. Now, one of Glenda's interests was she had started at National Women's. So when we got to Boston, she insisted that we drive approximately 20 miles out of Boston to this factory, which was to do with incubators and their motors and everything. I don't know all of it, but she insisted. And she came back with this bit of equipment and said, you haven't got the import license. I will just put it in my bag and bring it in. She said, they won't question me. In 2012, I was in Ascot Hospital, and I had a knee operation, and at that stage I was in the ward, and I was having a heart attack. And these nurses and doctors were running around everywhere at the hospital. But long and behold, who the hell was standing in the doorway was Glenda Stimpson. She seemed to arrive at the most inconvenient places, and she said to me, what's happened? I said, well, can't you see the ECG machine on me? Oh, yeah. Oh, so you had a heart attack. Rhonda was beside me also. In 2016, I decided to go on the all-black tour to Chicago. She was so excited that I was going back to see my twin brother, Calvin. And she said to me, make sure that you have a long and hopeful time with them. But as the all-black tour will show, there is organisation, so we had about 5 days where I could go with them. And then I came sick again in 2019, and I was in North Shore Hospital. And a junior doctor came around with his iPad, and he's busy tapping on the iPad, and he said to me, who have you got in high places? I said, nobody, why? Well, somebody's complained in the upper thing about you not getting the service. I said, oh dear, there can only be one person for delivery. So, I was fortunate to be the last brother to see her. Just on a fortnight ago now, Rhonda and I travelled down to Ngatea. We was there with her for the day, and we spoke to her, and we said to her, we'll see you next time. Well, we didn't see you next time. So my speech is very short, but Glenda, I did my speech. Thank you.
as you can see, no notes. I was late leaving Oklahoma. I apologise for arriving late. On the way, I was trying to think, what the hell can I say about Glenda? Well, my earliest memories, just as they'd mentioned the scooter, Glenda turned up at Ruapookie, way out near Raglan. How she got there on 3 wheel tracks, I would not know, but she somehow arrived without bruises and bleeding, so that's how I met my cousin Glenda. Sorry, I haven't introduced. But my dad and Glenda's dad were brothers, so we're first cousins. Glenda tells me she actually hitchhiked. I've no memories, but my older brother thinks maybe she hitchhiked to where Dad was milking cows for wages at Timata, so not quite such bad roads and a little bit more chance of getting a ride. But anyhow, over the years I've done a lot of work for Glenda and Alison, Rotoiti, a lot of time spent, especially with my number 1 man Friday, Alison, at Glenbrook. Recently, 3 weeks probably, I turned up at Narkia. So anyhow, Alison's lawns needed work, and I spent till dark doing lawns. The next morning I hurried and got rid of the fruit, finished the lawns, and then Alison presents me with this damn blind to put up. In the early afternoon we were making a bit of progress and kept altering the blind, and finally I said to Glenda, I'm glad you're paying me on contract, not by the hour on this job. And from that time on I was no longer her cousin, I became the man doing the blind. I then rang Alison that night and she said, Glenda still asks you, when did the man that came to do the blinds leave? So, thanks for the memory, Glenda.
Hi everyone, for those who don't know me, I am Mervyn's eldest son. I've also got 2 siblings, Sean and Vanessa, who are based over in Australia, and they would have dearly loved to have been here today, but they've sent through some short notes. I'll just quickly read them out. And this is from Sean. Glenda was so special to us as she was to so many, and we will forever remember her generosity, love and kindness. She shared with us countless stories of the places she had seen, adventures she had, and the people she had come across. And I think everyone would agree with us that she touched the lives of all the people she met. Glenda, we will miss you and the support you offered us, and thank you for the laughs we have had together, the time we spent together, and the many, many happy memories you have left us. And this is from my sister Vanessa. Auntie Glenda, your ability to connect with people, tell stories, give memories through photos, love generously and share encouraging words will continue to bless people even now. My earliest memories are of you bringing the Advent calendars around every Christmas, which had been lovingly wrapped. I started the same tradition with my daughter this last Christmas, and it was a memory I will keep of you and pass on. You came to any award ceremony, musical show I was in, graduation or occasions. From a teen picking me up at 4:30 a.m. for an airport trip to the Gold Coast to meet my family when I slept past my alarm, to coming to say goodbye on my Japan travels. You have always been one step away from taking a photo, showing support or giving advice. From having too many ice cream flavours to choose from, paying me to sort through your docket when you knew I needed the extra money, or even letting me borrow your car. You are my definition of what it means to be a generous, selfless, caring and loyal person. Thank you for loving your family and friends so well. I will miss you dearly. And so I won't keep you too long, but I just thought it would be, I'd like to share a couple of things with you. And as Vanessa mentioned, she was an auntie who was involved in our lives from a very early age. During the school holidays, we often used to look forward to the adventures she'd take us on, whether that be to the zoo or sheep world. They were excursions that we really look forward to. And there's one particular one, and I'm enjoying this without the right to reply. This is going to be quite nice. She somehow had a friend who had a batch over on Mackay Island, so she decided that she was going to take myself when I was maybe about 8 or 9, my sister who was about 4, and Matthew and Brendon as well over. So by herself she took 4 kids over to an island. So we caught the ferry over. A friend over there met us with their quad bike and trailer, loaded all the gear into the trailer, and off it took up the hill, and we slowly plodded along behind. And it was quite a steep hill, and the house was located up on the top. No power, no nothing. And it was just a really lovely time of bonding and playing, as we've mentioned before, card games and things like that. It was a really lovely time. But there was a tractor that was parked in the shed next door to the house. And not knowing that she had a farming background, one morning she decided that she was going to take us for a drive down to the beach in it. And I was a little bit apprehensive about it, and all right. So she hooked up the trailer, and she couldn't get the thing to start for love nor money. And so I was thinking, well, okay, it's probably about time we go for a walk now, but she was determined. Eventually it roared into life, and so she backed it out, and off we went. And we came to the top of the hill, and the rest of us were all gazing around, enjoying the view, and suddenly I started noticing that we were sort of going downhill a lot quicker than I was probably expecting it to do. And I turned around to sort of stare at her, and all I could see was her pumping the brake furiously, and nothing was happening. And I distinctly remember sitting in that trailer, looking at the side, and there was a hill that was rolling down the grass, and wondering whether that was my better option to jump out, or whether I was better in the trailer. But we got to the bottom in one piece, and she never said whether she was ever at any stage worried about losing some nephews and nieces, and how she was going to explain that to her parents. But I'm sure that she would have cared greatly about it. She loved being around people, and she loved playing post. You know, I've got fond memories of going around to her place in Ellerslie, and as a kid, you know, soda stream machine, that was awesome. And then the pool at Nui Mana, coming around and swimming that was some of my favourite memories. But as you get older, you value things differently. And so as I got older and being out at Glenda and things, it was the time spent with Glenda and Alice, and the conversations and things we'd have. I could sit with Glenda and we'd discuss what was going on in life, and advice was received, whether I asked for it or not, and I chose whether I accepted it or not. And legacy is often a big word that's used in times like this. I mean, you've already heard some of her nursing career and things. I think there's definitely a massive legacy that she's left in the midwifery area. I know that for my family, the legacy is more around family, the commitment to family, the loving of people and showing endless care for them. And so I think that even though we're gathered here today to say goodbye, I think that quietly she's actually quite pleased to see that once again she's managed to pull together a good crowd of people to have connection and things with. So I look forward to catching up with you all after back afterwards.
Read from my notes. Hello, I'm Melvin, my eldest Tim and Kathy Sam, and I wanted to share our journey with Glenda with you. Before I started, I wanted to reiterate my immense thanks to Alison for all the love and care over all the years that she's given Glenda, and the role that she has also come to play in our family. I also wanted to thank the brothers and their family for all their care, especially over the recent time when she needed you so much. Glenda became my guardian when I was very young, and my foster mum when she saw the name of her builder pop up on the patients list at Green Lane National Women's. She'd already taken us under her wing when I was 9, and 3 years later when she saw that name come up, she wondered and worried where those kids were. And then with Betty there ensued a long drive to rural townships, following rumours from place to place, until she found the farm that we had been sold to. And Glenda being Glenda, finding this abhorrent, just took us home. As she would say, all you need to be is willing. And so began a new life for me that shaped the person I am and the family I have here today. She was all I ever wanted in a mum. She was my constant safe haven and my rock. She was the hard conversations I didn't want to have. She was a teacher in all things, from loving lifelong learning to knowing how to say goodbye to a loved one every time like it mattered, because you just didn't know what tomorrow would bring. She was my constant cheerleader, the first to celebrate with me and to set the next goalpost. She was the first to listen and comfort. As she said to me last week, you just need to keep putting one foot in front of the other, and you only have to live for today. And remember, I love you. She was Nana Glenda with Nana Allison for my Sam and Tim and Kath. And it will always be a joy to me that she saw the kids happy in their lives, and she was so proud of them. She believed in them and loved them always, from when she snuggled Tim, birthed and saved Kath's life, and cuddled her, and Kath became her goddaughter, or when she held and marvelled at the successful C-section of Sam. She was always there for them with advice and unconditional love, and this love has been a constant between them all throughout their lives. Her phrase, remember, there is no can't, there is only can or won't, is still a life constant with us all. She was so proud of my husband Nigel, the kids' dad, and as for all of us, she never shied from long conversations with him over these last 20 years. She loved us all fiercely, and she loved me, and I will be forever thankful that she did. I have been so immensely lucky to have had Glenda, and we have been so immensely lucky to have been loved by her, and we will miss her very much every day.
Good afternoon, everybody. Carol, Felder, Simmons from Taranaki, cousins of Glenda's. We're missing one sister here, Margaret, who was born 2 days younger than Glenda. So this is a message from Margaret. To those who don't know me, my name is Margaret Peterson, residing in Queensland, Australia. I am the cousin that is 2 days younger and always told so. To some unsuspecting soul, sometimes with pride. We saw one another almost 2 years ago when we celebrated our 80th birthdays together. We were very close, not only in age. She has taken many, many photos of weddings, including mine, as a lot of you would know. Photography was her greatest passion off duty. Both of us were registered nurses, DC nurses. Only Glenda made more of her career than I did. She was a person who gave her all in whatever she did, and I should take my glasses off really, and scathing when you didn't. Inquisitive by nature, she found out lots of family secrets, but was also caring. One more thing, you're the best travel organiser ever. You were always at the airport to greet and welcome us to New Zealand. Rest well, dear lady, and farewell. You've earned it. Love always, Margaret and families. Hugs to Alison and her own family. Mervyn and Gay, Neville and Rhonda, Calvin and Kim, Rob and Jackie and families.
I've got one from our matriarch cousin in Melbourne, and she's been very close to our family of Vicar's. Glenda was loved and admired by her Aussie cousins. Loved because she always made us very welcome when we came to visit, and because she came to Australia several times to see us. Admired because she accomplished so much. A courier of her half-brothers and a successful career as a midwife and continuing figure in midwife activities. We want to pay tribute to a person who gave so much to others. We are grateful for her life. Irene and Jan for all the Westcots, Melbourne.
Shortly we are going to enjoy some memories and photos, fruits perhaps of photos that Glenda herself has taken. So we'll invite you to be our last.
The old men don't work like the I'm actually a cousin. I have not met a lot of you people, but when on Graham Ward, I don't know if you've heard or no, because we've been cousins all the time, but when we first met Glenda was when I was in Waimata, which is just south of Waihi. They came to stay with us. There was Bill, her brother, Brendon, me, my two sisters, and man that was staying with us, that was working on the farm. There was my granddad and his mum and dad, and my son. There was another one anyway, but and we were all in a 4-bedroom home, and I still to this day don't know how the heck we fitted in there, but we worked it, and there was a lot of us. But Glenda was always one of us. We went down to the little stream that wandered through the farm, and we used to catch mountain trout. We had a hook on bent a pin with a bit of cotton on a string, and caught these mountain trout, put them in a bucket, and then we'd put them back and go home. But we'd go back and catch them the next day. And I'll never forget, there was a race on a Saturday morning. The Taniā Tour Express used to come down the hill. It was quite a steep hill, and the guard would throw the herald off for us. And there'd be a mad scramble across the paddock to get this herald to see who would get there first. And it was quite a steep way down and crossing up, and then because normally you had to fight through the fern to find the damn thing anyway. But no, I didn't see a lot of Glenda after, for a while, and then all of a sudden we came back together because we were foundation pupils at the Henderson High School. I'm a year older than her, but pretty close. So yeah, no, we had a great time. I'd like to say condolences from my sister who was going to be here today, or would have liked to have been here today, but she's unable to through ill health. And I just say, bless you, Glenda. We've always loved you, and she's always been one of us. Thank you for that.
Move, Alison, Robin, Nev, to you, the extended family. Thank you for sharing today. It would be wonderful if you would gather together following a farewell for Glenda next door for refreshments, a chance to catch up and to continue the conversation here today. For now, we're going to take some time as we reflect in photos. young lady, it's time to say farewell to you. We come to the formal part of our service. So I invite you, as we commend and commit into God's care, to please be standing.
There is nothing in life or death, in the world as it is, the world as it should be. Nothing in all creation that can separate us from the love of God and Jesus Christ our Lord. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, by whose great mercy we have been born anew into a living hope by the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead.
Glenda, Elizabeth, Stimpson, God alone is holy and just and good. In that confidence, therefore, we commend you to God's judgment and mercy, God's forgiveness and love. Blessed be God the Father, who has caused the light of Christ to shine upon you. Therefore, Glenda, we commit your body to be cremated, earth to earth, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, in the sure and certain hope of the resurrection to eternal life in Jesus Christ our Lord. Blessed are the dead who die in the Lord, for they rest now from their labours. We join together with our closing hymn.